This is 118
Why
proof.
would anybody do
They
this?
fall apart. They're the most tender.
It tastes like I just got pepper sprayed by a cop. No more questions. Are we done?
Guys, 11:30. I think everybody's getting let in now. If y'all can't hear me, something's wrong with the audio, potentially on your end, but put it in the chat. Let me know if you're not getting the words I'm saying. Welcome. Thank you all for joining. This is not our first AI event to hold. It is the first one we've done like this. Three of the most significant AI integrators, developers, drivers inside the center walls are joining us today to help champion some ideas that have worked successfully for us and for some of our customers so that we can all kind of learn from how this AI rollout, adoption, and everything else is working. So I'm real excited that we have three great speakers to get into. We're going to jump in very quickly, but first I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. My name is James Schuler. I'm your host today. As always, our marketing events, Allie Boyce is our producer. Allie, yep, thank you for the wave.
Hi.
And then Jesslyn, part of that marketing team as well, is manning the chat. So if y'all have questions, throw them in the chat. Let us know. We'd much rather be driving the questions that y'all have to the speakers instead of guessing on what it is that y'all want to talk about most. So really happy that you guys are all here to this lunch on Friday to be able to go over this stuff with us. Center is a guide. We are not usually a developer. We're usually the guide and consultant on programs like this. And so what you should expect out of us if you get engaged on an AI project or an AI conversation is a very consultative approach around how your departments operate and work today, where they're stuck with mundane tasks or manual behaviors. And we're going to start putting in either automation or AI tools, usually wrapped around the Microsoft stack first, in order to try to solve those problems that your business is challenged with. Not all challenges, though, should be solved with Microsoft products. In fact, there's probably a handful of people on this call that have preferences for AI tools that aren't Copilot. In fact, why don't we throw that in the chat real quick? If you prefer not Copilot, throw in your favorite tool that you do like. And if you give me just a one line as to why, like better with code or makes visual images and or videos, things like that, throw it out there. My favorite's not Copilot because I like to deep fake our CEO often to get things accomplished quicker, and it doesn't do good for that. All right, so with that, I'm going to open it up first with Chris Wilcox. If you've worked with Center for a long time, there's still a chance that you haven't met Chris yet. Chris is an integrator inside of Center, and as an integrator, he's taking these new emerging tools and techs that Center adopts as part of our C-Stack, and then figures out how to turn those into programs that our NOC can use successfully. Everything from any tech is really a journey as far as adoption. AI just seems to be the poster child right now for how do we get this to not only stick but used correctly by everyone in the business. So, Chris, I want to start with thanking you for building out a talk track and topics like this that are going to help everybody learn from your experience. If I understand right, we're going to get into a bit of like how to start, what to actually think about, how to build that adoption, and then we're going to talk about industry-ready ideas that people are used successfully from our client base. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Nice. And then, Chris, a little background. Just tell the guys who you are. You live on the coast and fish every day?
I do live on the coast. I try to fish every day. When I'm not fishing, I'm usually using AI to actually try to help me figure out how to catch more fish. I also build my own custom fishing rods, and almost every aspect of my fishing rods are designed by an AI agent that I made, so I can make sure that they are, applicable made for each type of fish I'm out trying to catch. But yeah,
Nice.
I live down in Galveston County, so.
Yeah, when I go fishing, I still look for somebody else to hand me the equipment to bring the boat. I look for just the experience. And in fact, if I could get someone to cast for me, I don't mind that either.
That's fair. That's fair.
Let them bait my hook and cast for me. I just need to reel it in.
That's one thing I don't think AI can do just yet. We'll figure that out, though.
Oh, man. I was just watching the news, I don't know if anyone else on this call is watching news in one eye and trying to work on their computer with the other. But the headline was that a private school is replacing their teachers with AI tools. I guess they learned nothing from Taco Bell replacing all their fast food drive-through attendants with AI, huh? I hope that doesn't actually happen, that we lose the ability to our teachers to teach because of AI, but it's coming. All right. Well, let's start with you want to start with the how to start? Like everyone's probably loaded up some AI tools and gotten stuck. Do you want to jump right in on what we see most commonly?
Yeah, so everyone's talking about AI, right? Most
Mhm.
organizations right now are feeling really behind, and they're honestly just overwhelmed. So many tools and unsure where to actually start, right? And the key factor here is that we're not actually lacking for tools right now. We're lacking clarity on execution of those tools. And so that's what we're going to kind of talk through. The real question here is what AI tool should I use, right? What does AI actually fit in my business, right? How do we protect the business while we're using it? Will people actually adopt it, right? And Center, we talk a lot about tools and process and people, so we'll break through that as well, right?
Mhm.
So as we talk through this, right, we're going to look into, there's a framework that we have to process through the tools. What can AI actually do? And you posed that question very well with asking about the chat, right? Which chat do you like and why?
Yeah.
Because they're not all created equal.
It is scary. They're all scouring the internet for answers and bringing that back to us, and yet their answers don't always align.
Correct. And understanding which tool your people will use is actually a key factor and one of the main paths you have to go down when you're trying to figure out your AI path that your company is going to go through. And then, after you can figure out what tools everybody's going to use, right, then you have to figure out how do you use it safely and consistently, right? So
Mhm.
you can't just throw any tool out there. You have to make sure that it's going to meet with your compliance standards and that your company and your executives are aligned for that vision as well, right? And then you move into the people, right? Will they use it? If you just go out and you just throw out any AI tool, it may not be used, right? It could be overcomplicated. And do they understand the value of that tool, right? Do they understand, you know, what it does and how they can use it to alleviate just seconds and minutes off of their job, right? So
Sure.
most organizations will over focus on the tools and underinvest in the people using those tools.
Now
And
you're talking a lot, I feel like, about the employees of the business and how they become more efficient, and their alternate use of maybe a Google search is now a Chat GPT search, is now a Copilot search. Take it one step higher. We are a company of very technical people. The people that are listening are probably predominantly technical people, but what about that audience, specifically us, the technical people? How are they getting the decision making? I guess is the decision any different on what tool to use depending on how technical you are? It's probably what I'm trying to ask.
to me, it's not really about how technical you are when it comes to AI, right? So AI is going to show value to anybody, but each department and what they utilize could be different per organization. So when you look at the people, so when you have developers, I saw someone in the chat talked about Claude in the coding, right?
Yeah.
Is accounting going to need Claude? More than likely not, right? Where Copilot, with integration into SharePoint, what's going on with the company, and then for basic standardized, accounting purposes, completely different thought process when you're looking at the people. Um, and then when you're looking at the tools themselves, what I like to recommend to people is start small and show value, right? AI doesn't need to be big, right? There's simple use cases that you can use to create momentum, right? And I know, James, you had an example. We were talking the other day. You had an example about the employee handbook. You want to share that one?
Yeah, I'm seeing that all you guys jumping in. I saw Kyle, you're in here. I think Todd, yeah, you're in here. Some of y'all heard this story, but I just want to reiterate this component of it. There's an element that I think, Chris, you're hitting at here that I jumped in too fast to build an agent when really what I probably should have done was ask questions to those around me on what our process is going to be for how we're going to not allow for agent sprawl to happen. But here I am, Chris, to your point, a people who wants to use it, hungry to learn more, jumping in and trying to leverage the tool to its fullest. In this case, y'all who know me know I'm not a reader, and I don't usually jump into documents and legalese and try to find details. I wanted to get a question out of the handbook that I just didn't know where to look. It's a pretty thick handbook these days. And so I built an agent that would scour the handbook, and then via Teams, I could ask it questions. It would give me that data back. I think practically speaking, that's a good use for almost any company. You don't get wrong answers. You don't get, interpretation from one person speaking it to another. Instead, it's just there. Here it is. The problem was that I thought we saved all that stuff in SharePoint, and there is a handbook of centers in SharePoint, and there's another one that's in HiBob. HiBob is our tool that our HR team uses to be efficient. And it's a SaaS offering that's housing some of our newer data. So I had built this thing pointed at the old document, giving outdated answers. Well, HR didn't know that they needed to go back and do that. So now I got to level up the HR team to understand they've got to keep care of their data. And I've got to level up my own thinking about, am I touching something? I need to go back and verify with the user or the owner of that data that it's actually the right data. So just a circle that I kept going through trying to help the group when in reality, I probably was going too far, too fast. Is that fair, Chris?
Yeah, that's fair. But that moves into the show aspect of it, the show don't tell, where people adopt
I
the
tried
AI.
not to tell after that. I didn't want anyone to know what I did.
No, I mean, but to be fair, I mean, I actually used that one the other day. I needed all the holiday. I needed the actual holiday
Corporate holiday
list
schedule.
because
Yeah.
for our support for everybody, we're 24/7, right? Which means on holidays we have to coordinate volunteers to work. So that's what I used yours for, was to pull that information for me, and it was a whole lot easier to go look it up that way, and it was to all the clicking and trying to figure out where it was stored. So,
You're bringing up a fun point about people. I jumped in too quick. I didn't check with the right people, and now
right,
you're trying to use it, but never did we communicate to the team that this exists, start using it. So now we have a training gap as well.
correct.
All right, integrator, fix it.
Don't worry, I'm on that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
But but after they saw it, right, they instantly, you had a talk with them, and they wanted to adopt it. They want to use it because that puts it out there in front of everybody.
Right.
So it's an instant AI use that the entire company benefits from. So, it was the demonstration was valuable to them. It's real use case, and it was great hands-on exposure for you and what AI can do for everyone. It was even though it was a route to get somewhere that's not just standardized, right? Where we do want to see governance in these type of things, but man, you provided a small win quick, and that's what people want, right? It was a small win that was very valuable.
I talked about this in a previous presentation, but I like that you can do things like my job requires me to travel a lot, guys. I'm in the office a lot, but I'm rarely consistently in the office. I get pulled around. But I got new hires starting Monday, and all I could think about was that these guys are going to need me to answer questions and show them things about centers messaging that you can't just go find that easily. SharePoint's a beast. So how do you start digging through all the files to find the needle in the haystack you're asking about? And so I built another one. This one, you talk about start small, definitely not company wide. I'm going to use it for maybe training 3 new hires that are going to be sales reps. So I need to focus this one really narrow into just what data and information does marketing provide about what center does. And what I found is by coaching it into my personality a bit, it speaks like me. It looks for things that I would say or do in messaging, analogies I would use to explain center, and it incorporates those into it, even though that's not in our marketing material. I like that you can do those things if you, again, think small, but think about big picture. How can I make this small item really good? And you can go beyond just enabling it. You can create it to where it's got your personality in it and everything else.
Exactly. And
So
actually,
that drives me into, if I'm this well adopted into it, why does adoption fail? Is it just fear? Like why do these not work?
adoption fails because people don't understand what they're using, right? They don't understand what they're using. They don't understand what it can do for them, right? And so
Well,
that's why
so
adoption.
training.
Training is a great way to help people get in there, show them the examples, show them the real world value, right? And it's a nice segue into my next point of focusing on the augmenting of it, not replacing work but using AI, right? So everybody's got that big fear right now, and you spoke to it at the beginning, that AI is replacing everything. AI doesn't have to replace the people, but what it can replace is those small moments of repetitive work that you have to do, right? And if you show people the tool and you train them on how it's going to do that for them, that's where you get the win. That's why the tool's not going to fail for you anymore. They're going to
Yeah.
see the work, and they're going to see that they can reduce that repetitive work that they do.
One of my favorite things to ask people at the company, and y'all, hopefully the audience gets a kick out of this. I may ask y'all to put something in the chat again on this one. But you could go ask somebody who does a lot of like coding, which job is going to get replaced first by AI. And of course, they don't think theirs. Of course, it has to be someone else's. So I hear a lot of like front desk type work, clerical work, hard to replace facilities, but reduction in facility teams. Everyone thinks marketing teams are going to shrink or frontline sales. It's funny to hear that everyone has a different opinion on where that's going to start cutting. To my point earlier, I didn't think teachers would be this early. I thought that would be a lot later. But yeah, we've seen it work though. Maybe not in the form of replacement of employees, but how to level up your department, how to have a bit more accuracy, more performance, higher quality. Maybe we should talk about a couple of those. We have a lot of clients, Chris, in that architecture, engineering, construction world. Um, I see them doing quite a bit actually, but one of my favorites, an architecture firm that's leveraging AI to scan their blueprints for potential mistakes. Maybe it's a load bearing issue or something where the AI's pinging the area that says you've got to spend more focus and time in this spot. Um, Talk about that a little bit. Is Copilot designed to take in blueprints and start looking at it, or do you see other tools being required for that?
So, yeah, I mean, speaking of not knowing if a tool can do what you want, I have no clue if Copilot can do blueprint analysis. Offhand, I would say that it can, but can it do it to the level you need it to fit with your business?
Nailed it. Yeah, I
Right.
love that answer. Like, yes, it can analyze against any standard. Tell it the
Right.
standard and then give it a diagram and let it do its thing. But then the next piece of it is, well, does it link into my design software where it can actually give me recommendations on how to solve it? All right, you're right. I missed that, say a beam. Now it's no longer a load bearing area. I got my fail inspection. What recommendations do you have to keep it, in the same design, the same style, the same aesthetic? Well, it's got to now connect to your software, right?
Correct.
So a lot of questions. And for us, that conversation started with the customer simply just telling us, AI's out there. I don't know what it's going to be able to do for us. What could we do with it? And as we poked around to different ideas, that was the one they came up with. And so we've helped them in setting up a platform that's doing just that. It is linking into their software. And to your point, for them, it is producing what they needed out of it.
Right. And AI is going to work best inside of your existing tools, your existing workflows, not outside of them. And when you look at the integration of tools, you also have to you have to evaluate your tools, and you're going to have to look at their roadmaps as well, right? What AI do they have coming? Everybody has AI coming. And then when you start to figure out what fits or what your people are going to use, then you run into that buy versus build scenario. Should I go build something custom that fits in,
Right.
or do one of my tools already have it and I can just integrate it easily? I know I represent our support team in our AI committee. So we have an AI committee for governance. And, I pitched this great tool for quality analysis. And the moment I got it approved, man, I jumped right on it. I'm ready to integrate. I'm excited for it, right? And behold, the next day, our vendor has an option for it, right? So what I got approved had already expired in the matter of 24 hours, and then I had to go down a different route. But I actually enjoyed going down that route because I like the idea that it's already existing in my system and I don't have to go recreate a wheel and have that managed. So while that doesn't work for all the scenarios and all the use cases, I love it when it's already in a tool and it'll do what I want it to do.
Yeah.
So
That's strong. I'm preaching to the choir with this team that's listening. I know a lot of these names, they've already got their theories on how AI needs to land in their business. But just the speed it's moving at, it's so hard to train anyone on because tomorrow it's adjusted, or it's hard to adopt a direction because tomorrow it's totally different. The variables are changing way too quick.
correct.
So in our not yet, but in our next, I think we're going to start talking about some of those things governance wise that you can start building your business to be ready for that that quick adaptation of what's happening with the variables changing. I have a construction customer. They're using Copilot, specifically Copilot, to look at past projects and learn from the lessons of their overages or maybe missed scopes. They're dropping all their new project statements of work into it against that database of old projects to make sure it's working right, or that it's accurate. Will you talk a little bit about maybe Center's World? We're a bit like that too, right? That's what your project was. You were trying to get data from IT Glue to work for us, correct?
Correct. So IT Glue is a documentation system, right, that we use to manage all the documentation for our customers. And what we have is, while we can get access to some of it, we can't get access to those fundamental SOPs, the information that actually looks to solve repetitive problems that we're aware of, right? And so what we decided to do was create an agent that all of our team can use, right? But we wanted to make sure that IT Glue, the documentation, the SOPs that we utilize to ensure that we're solving problems for our customers, is a core process of that AI agent that our team can use. So we decided to use some automation tools that we already had, and we were going to run it through there. And then lo and behold, within getting that project approved, the next day, ConnectWise, which is our ticketing system, announced that they're buying an entire AI platform that can integrate. And of course, it's got IT Glue access, right? So a lot of what we wanted to create ourselves already there now. So we waited for that to go through before we decided to move forward.
This is such a dilemma that I think everyone's going to find themselves in: is do I build it now and spend the cost of creating something fresh? But I gotta continue to evolve and make sure it stays up to date, or do I wait patiently? Well, it's tough to wait patiently right now when your competition's adopting something either custom or more expensive than you want to put into at this stage. That's interesting. You've got to be able to start, stop, and pivot the moment those variables adjust. What about medical customers? We have quite a few of those as well. I know we got one in particular that's their KPI of success is keeping people, not keeping them in beds, but keeping beds full. And they're using AI for almost like a restaurant would, to make sure that their flow of how tables should be seated is always efficient and optimized. And Copilot's helping them specifically with that, so that they can make sure that those beds are being used right. We got a couple other examples that I put down here. One of them is not Copilot. I'll go ahead and touch on it since we're in medical. But we have a customer that's using two different AI tools for two different outcomes. One is early detection, and one is post. So that's taking scans that they did, X-rays or PET scans, CAT scans, and it's doing a better job at detecting than the human can. Well, at least an alternate opinion. The second one was, there's one that's physical therapy after operations, that they're able to leverage like the motion that someone moves in and how they're making the recovery in their PT. The AI is actually creating the exercises based on their height, based on their length of their arm or the length of their legs, creating new exercises for them to strengthen those muscles. So those are not in Copilot. I don't even know that Copilot could do it if they wanted it to. I don't care that they can't. All I know is that business is secure in a way that they can use whatever tool they think they need to use to succeed. So yeah, Chris, anything you want to end on?
No, I just I just when you really the to end off this, what I want to say is that you need to deploy an adoption strategy, right? You just need to make sure that you understand what it is you're trying to do. You need to make sure that your people are going to buy in, start off with those small wins. You don't even have to start with a full governance strategy as well, right? What you can simply do there is just build out some foundations and make sure everybody's on board on that. Work your way towards full governance strategies. Um, and just figure out those use cases that are going to save your people time. And that's where you're going to find success in AI.
Perfect. Allie, do we have any questions that you want to bring up?
So far, you guys have explained everything so perfectly thoroughly. No questions have come to the chat, but if that does change the next few minutes, if anyone has questions,
Yeah.
you know where to put them.
So to the chat, remember that Center is a pretty complex business and that we are a call center, and our call center is kind of our product. So a lot of the things that we do that we look for efficiencies behind the scenes may not be directly relatable, but in my experience, every single thing complexity wise that we're going through ends up being at least relatable in one sense or another to whatever you're trying to implement or put into place. If you guys have more questions for Chris, he's definitely available. Happy to talk to y'all about it. Let's see. Is that a question from Andrew? Andrew gets special treatment. If it is, we'll stop what we're doing and we'll talk about it.
A little bit more of a statement, but you know what?
Okay.
Since everyone's already this intrigued,
let's read a statement to everybody.
In the legal field, I'm introducing AI software to assist attorneys and legal staff with drafting demand letters, summarizing medical records, extracting case details, and automating repetitive legal workflows.
So guys, one of my roles at Center is mergers and acquisitions, and we get a lot of NDAs we have to sign. And again, I don't like reading legalese. And so I have parameters that I'm unwilling to bend on. And so I have the Copilot agent trained on what Center standard is, and then we can load their document in Copilot, and it'll tell me, hey, these are breaking your own rules. Broader than that, like I wouldn't necessarily think to myself that I need to go show Andrew that in the legal side, but we should probably share notes, Andrew, on what you're doing, how you're doing it, and if we're getting success out of it. Stronger together, I say. Okay. Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. If everybody could stop the clapping, we're going to move on to the next speaker. Appreciate it, Chris. All right. Next we got Centers. Oh, Allie.
Before we move on to the next speaker, I just wanted everyone to keep an eye out on our events page. Where we'll be having our annual steak event coming up soon. It's James' favorite event of the year. Be full of tons of insights and maybe fun little steak giveaways. I don't know.
I think this is our 4th or 5th year to do something like this. Do me a favor, guys. If you've been part of our steak event before, put it in the chat. I just want those who haven't to know that this is like the maybe the greatest event Center's ever done. So 44 Farms is going to help us out again with this. We're still putting together what the box will have in it. It's one of those things that I look forward to every year. I think the topic is going to be Microsoft centric, but not AI. I believe it's going to be more around their licensing and the benefits of why, when you're especially doing AI things, business premium, conditional access policies, Entra ID is more important than ever. Seems to be a topic that's overlooked at this stage. And I get why it's not the coolest in the room anymore, but it is obvious to us and our metrics that it's still something that our customer base needs to be hearing. So please join us and have fun at that one.
Yeah, and thank you also everyone for joining for this first session. We just sent some resources in the chat for you guys to take a look at.
That is a really rare looking steak, though. It's kind of That might be
I
one step
know.
too far, too rare. Throw it out there, guys. Put it in the chat. Is that steak cooked right or wrong? I don't know.
James, you're the all-knowing. You got to tell us.
I'm analyzing it right now. Perfect. Thank you, Ariel. All right. Center's Chief Information Security Officer, Robert Nettles, is with us. Robert is, are you doing another plug?
Okay. Well, oh wait, I'll hold the plug. I'll hold the plug.
Robert has been with Center now going on a year. He's relatively new to our story, but was a client before he was our CISO. Robert, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, super excited.
Good. Now, next, Robert, we put together kind of an AI journey. So this is going to kind of start to zoom out a little bit from where Chris Wilcox was just giving us the micro. We're going to go macro now and zoom out to the full journey from beginning to end. You were instrumental in helping prepare Center's standard for how companies should drive through this, and it's led to the Bible for at least us on how we consult in AI. Is that accurate?
Yeah, a lot of what Chris was talking about is the kind of the what you're trying to do. This kind of portion of it is really leaning into, how you're going to get there, the governance, the data readiness, the business alignment, the strategy. So it's just looking at this from a slightly different perspective. None of what I'm going to talk about has anything to do with specific tools. It's just the readiness and getting your company on path.
Nice. And yeah, so that's the perfect way to start this. Do you want to begin with the image of our journey, or do you want to show, start that now?
Yeah, if we could get that up.
Yeah, Ali, help me out. Can you share that for the group so they kind of get a sense of where we're headed on this discussion?
Perfect.
We're headed down the road.
So this really is just to walk through. I mean, anybody can stumble into the right room if you're lost in a house, but this is how do you pick your path and how do you go about this methodically so that you kind of minimize those bumps and bruises as you're going to where you want to go. Every company, Center included, has already made missteps and had to step back and redo work. So all of this strategy is just how do we set up a framework so the company can move down, minimize risk, think about security, think about business alignment so that the investment you're making in the tools and the processes aligns with where the business is trying to be. So I know there's a ton of words on here, and I know these process slides, I'm former Big Four. I love slides. I love processes. Not everybody gets it, but I wanted to kind of walk y'all through some of these steps, why they're on here, and then let's talk about it a bit. So first and foremost, being in security, I'm all about controls frameworks. I'm all about restrictions. I'm all about having, control over things. When we're talking about the controls and the policy, what this is getting into is you have to start off and just decide, is my company a restrictive culture or a permissive culture? And you have to build your whole plan around that. If your company is already restrictive and you're very controlling on what can be in the environment and what has to do, that could be because you have regulations. It could just be because that's the culture. Lean into it. Make sure that this process kind of aligns with that. But if your culture is very much a laissez-faire, kind of letting your employees figure out what works best for them, you're going to have a totally different way you're coming about this. It's not that it won't work. It's just employees will find a way around restrictive controls if you have that permissive kind of culture. So understanding, how your business is, get your controls framework and your policies, your acceptable use policy, your legal and compliant stuff, if you need the guardrails and the blockers for restricting, get all of those in place as you're early on, as you're really figuring out what you're doing. Most companies have kind of leapfrogged over this step and they go into looking for productivity gains kind of right away. But it's very important to step back, get your AI governance board in place if you need it, get your policies and kind of do that first step. Then you can move on to that next step of really looking for the productivity. And this is where you're going to start seeing your first ROIs. So this is where look for those early wins, look for these things that you can say, yes, this is where we're starting to get gains. And that only helps, build that support from the board, build the support from other leadership that may not be on board. But this is where you're looking at like email drafting, meeting summaries, working on documentation. Right here, this is very much, this step is the reason why Center really leans in on Copilot. Copilot is the easy button when you're looking at these first 3 and 4 steps because it is locked to your tenant. So you do have a lot of data governance kind of built into it. So if you're just going to dip your toes and not go much further, it's really hard to argue against Copilot. It depends on the vision. But if you're really trying to be restrictive on the data, be careful on which tools you kind of put in place right at the beginning as you're just looking for these enablers. Because that next step, whatever you have in with the enablers, that's when you start integrating this stuff with your SaaS solutions. And this is the buy versus build conversation that Chris was talking about, where us at Center, we're looking at, hey, we've got a use case, we're trying to do this. We're really working to do it. And there's been several times where as we're going through that process of figuring out how we build this ourselves, our SaaS solutions either buy or implement the exact thing we're trying to build ourselves. And just buying that solution is a lot cheaper and more effective than building it unless you have some really weird edge case. The crazy thing is most organizations already own more AI than they're using. So really looking at what SaaS tools you have and what you can turn on to really enable the workflows that you already have. This is where you can take those productivity gains and you institutionalize them in just new ways of doing work. These are the 3 easy steps. I mean, every company can kind of jump through and do these regardless of their size. I think over time, it's going to be harder and harder to justify if you're not, looking for these first 3 steps. The 4th step with data governance, this is where the field starts to split based on the size and complexity of your business. The larger organizations, you're going to have to really deal with data governance because you have so many employees, you have so many teams inside the companies, and some are going to be siloed, some are integrated, but you have a lot of data sources. And if you don't deal with your data governance now, before you do your automation and your integration with custom development, you're going to run into situations where people have access to data they shouldn't, or there's version control. James, you already had talked about version control. That's something we are definitely dealing with our data governance, making sure that the AI tools have access to historical versions, but they know where the current documents are so that as we're writing agents, as we're dealing with things, the pertinent data is brought up and the historical data is available for research, but it isn't brought to the forefront accidentally. These are things that, data governance, it's, not sexy. It's not, something that is super easy, but this is something that has to be dealt with because if you skip over this step, AI is going to create a lot more problems, and they're going to create it a lot faster than anything has in the past, just with the way it searches through.
So, Robert, can I butt in real quick on a question here?
Yeah.
I got a lot of customers I talk to that tell me they want to implement AI. They've got a good vision. They got direction on what they think that's going to be. When I bring up data governance, they typically, like you said, they kind of want to brush over it a little bit. They've already got governance inside their environment. Maybe they have intra ID or a domain controller that got permissions, and they've got some security things with their firewall, other tools. Like where does someone start to make sure that they're AI ready when it comes to that exact chapter?
Yeah, and this is something that American companies are very much behind the ball in. In my previous role as a privacy officer for a Dutch firm, we had GDPR, we had, all of our other stuff going on. And then when the AI Act came out and it really restricted and added extra requirements on, it really highlighted that all of the data governance that we had been doing for these really restrictive privacy policies wasn't even enough to handle kind of what's required to be a good steward of the data that your company has, be a good steward of the data that your customers are trusting you with, and so that whatever AI journey you're going on, you have good knowledge of where that data is, how it's being processed, where it's being stored. And with the American privacy policies not requiring, even California and Virginia being, much harder to deal with than the rest of the states, it's nowhere near what you have to deal with in Singapore or Brazil or China with what is required of all companies for privacy with data governance. So as you're going down this path, when we're talking data governance, it's really more of just understanding what data elements you have, what vendors you have, what data elements are inside each vendor, where they're stored, who has processing rights, who has data governance rights and ownership of each thing. And so there's a lot you have to dig into. So as you're developing your plan for what access each of these agents or tools really should have, you have to really understand what your requirements are for each of those data elements. So even if you're totally unregulated and a small enough business, you're under the radar for any of the privacy laws, having control of where the data is, it solves some of these use cases. And you had talked about it with, the older employee handbook where you were asking questions and it stumbled upon it. And this is something that we've been working on to tighten up is, that's something that's not regulated by law. Having, last year's employee handbook is not anything that has any sort of privacy or data regulation implications, but it directly affects the effectiveness and how much hassle it is to make sure you can trust the data that comes out of these AI tools. So it's easy to look at it from the privacy lens because it's well defined. But what we're really getting at here is, can I trust the data that comes out of these tools? Because as you move past enablement and into more of your automation and your advanced development, that's where you really need to trust the data coming out can be acted on, and I don't need a human to just validate, because then what value am I really adding to the company if I'm having to validate everything that comes out?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's use case before you can say where to start with governance. But I hear a lot of people talk about, color coding data, tagging data in different ways. We got tools that can help with that, but maybe is that the intimidating part? People don't want to jump into that first. They want to make sure that AI actually works the way they want it to before they start digging into deep governance.
Yeah, and this isn't something that's new. When you look at data governance and automation versus different tools, yeah, I did a digital guardian implementation probably 20 years ago, where we were digging into even which like USB devices were allowed to be in the company so that we could control the movement of data. And this was a very large company, global, but when these types of projects where you have these Herculean governance issues, it's nothing new. It's things that have been kind of coming up for companies to kind of jump past and deal with. It's just that today, with AI's relevance being so prominent, that data governance as it pertains to AI is the current, elephant in the room. And so it's nothing new. There's always been these huge hurdles that companies have either decided, I'm going to dig in and do this really well, or I'm going to kind of skirt around and ignore it and just hope it doesn't hurt me. The kind of a lessons learned from some of these big companies, like when you talk about zero trust with what companies have done the last 5-10 years with that, there have been some companies that have spent billions of dollars. Like if you look at Lockheed or GE or these companies that were required to do this from the military, millions and billions of dollars have been spent on these projects. And the question just arises, what was the value that came out of it? And so the part of this journey, the reason why we're saying, look at your productivity and enabling the AI tools you already own first, before you do the governance, before you do anything else, is to kind of avoid that pitfall of investing, to you whatever is that Herculean amount of money and investment and effort, so that you get the return that befits the size of your company. So you aren't sitting down to say, I'm gonna have perfect data governance and perfect ownership and define everything out and have all of my, data elements mapped to my vendors, mapped back to, my requirements, and before we can even define, the access level control of this one tool. See what you can do quick and easy, then say from that what worked out, how can I then think about my automation and my workflows and really adding efficiency across platforms? And that's where the data governance really steps in. So this is really more of just damage control. It's not trying to just add a sexy word on this to make it look like, oh, it's a big deal. But this is really, that's why we have that kind of the stoplight right before data governance. Do your enablement, do everything you have with what you own and what you can just buy quickly. Before you integrate it into your workflows, you really need to understand where your data is, how it's moving, and how you can trust the data going into these tools.
Yeah, well said. And you were spot on for the way I think. When I hear data governance, I'm thinking about limiting the idea of intellectual property being leaked into the internet, limiting the idea that personal identifiable information is being put out there and avoiding a lawsuit. But you're right, it's actually a lot about accuracy. If I don't take these steps, these tools will prove to be inaccurate over time, and therefore they won't be adopted long term. They'll be dropped. That's got to lead to a lot of AI sprawl, I would think, too. Agents for doing stuff that others already could, but we don't trust it anymore, so it just stays there in the shadow, never actually cleaned up.
Yeah, and there are some legal implications. It's one thing to have documents prepared, or like what we were talking about earlier, having case law brought up saying this is points of interest to research and include in your arguments. As soon as you get into this next step of your automation, where you're taking information from one or two tools, you're combining it together in a workflow, that's where you start to get into kind of a legal area where you need to have great concern over what's happening. So we are, already doing like ticket triage and report generation with our tooling, where we're taking information from multiple different data sources and then combining it together in a way that lets our technicians make decisions very quickly. What we have not done is enabled these tools to make those decisions for us. Anytime you're getting to a place where a decision is being made without human oversight or interaction, this is kind of your holy grail of AI. That's where we want to get to. But right now, with the way a lot of privacy laws are written, especially outside the US, you cannot do anything that makes a decision without human oversight when it pertains to your employees, your customers. So you cannot use AI to weed out people during the interview process where it's totally transparent to anybody in HR. That information needs to be presented so that there isn't just this thing where a certain keyword wasn't somewhere and therefore everybody is excluded. And this is where you have to be careful because it's very easy to put those kind of workflows in place. But you have to be responsible with what you're doing. Much like you're saying, this leans over into this legal area with this sprawl, and we have to be very careful what we're doing. So the data governance, make sure that your data is organized. Your controls and policy, make sure you understand what regulations and actions are allowed and not allowed to really guide this whole process. And that's once all of those are in place, that's when you can kind of get into the sexy side of these detailed workflows and these automations that really start to add value.
Yeah, Ali, throw the screen back up if you don't mind. We're gonna get out of that stage 4 and into 5 and 6. And as we get there, man, think about the foundational work being done now that's going to lead to not just what data is my employee putting in an AI tool, but as we start to get into more of the humanoid robot styled AI tools that are right on the cusp of coming out and being available to us. Robert, I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but I'm hearing it's only like 25 to 30,000 a year to have an in-house human robot do things for you like dishes and maybe fold the laundry. I'm thinking that sounds pretty good.
If you get the laundry robot, I'll buy 2 of them. I mean, that's that pile never disappears. Um, no, but this is something that we've been seeing grow over the last 10, 15 years, even without the sexy AI label. When you look at SOCs and how security operation centers, how they
Oh, I thought
take,
you meant laundry again.
I had to say the
Yeah,
acronym just in case.
yeah.
But the security operation centers, how they take and triage all of these data feeds and try to boil them up into what the actionable alerts are. This is something where we've been using terms like, machine learning or robotic process automation, different things like that, where today it's just being called AI. But these are evolutions on processes that are being developed and built over the last 10, 15 years. It is where, when you do it right and you can trust the data, yes, workforce is impacted if your scope stays the exact same. But what it does is allows you to take your same workforce, really increase the amount of work that they're able to do, the value they're able to generate, and allows companies to grow and expand, to address more customers, to create more widgets, to refine more processes. So it's yes, horses were impacted when the car came out. I think in New York had well over 1 million horses before cars, and within just 5 years they were down to just a couple thousand. So there's going to be some impact in workforce, but for the most part, as these automations come out, it's really, how do we make sure that we are following all of our regulations? How do we have processes that protect the business so that we don't sidestep into a legal gray area? How do we consolidate and raise information up to our technicians in a way that they can make better decisions quicker and faster and with more confidence? And that's the way I choose to look at this.
I think at this stage, as you're starting to speak about it, the importance of having a consistent AI committee starts to really matter.
Yeah.
Talking about productivity of employees is one thing, but transformational tools that adjust how your business operates, there's just such a ripple effect. It's got to be tough for guys like Will Cox to integrate stuff that, say, a director of business development decides is the most important topic of the week and starts building out and says, "All right, now run with it." That can't be that way.
Yeah, and AI doesn't fail because of the technology. That's why all of this talk of the journey, it doesn't matter what tool you're talking about. This is the governance and the strategy. It fails because organizations aren't ready for it, whether they don't have the use cases, or they don't have the governance, or they don't have the leadership support for the particular solution they're trying to implement.
Right. Spot on. All right. I'm lost on my journey. Where are we at, stage 5 or 6 now?
Yeah, so we've talked through kind of the 3 steps that every company should do. Data governance, once you've decided, okay, I'm seeing return in investment, we're seeing productivity increase, we're handle our data. This is where you move on to the really sexy side of it, with the automation, with the advanced development, with your workflows, with how you leverage these data lakes that you've been building over the last several years. So you've got confidence over your data, you've got some productivity, now you've got use cases and workflows you're trying to work through. And this is where you start stepping beyond just enabling your existing tooling. And this is where you start creating autonomous agents that say, okay, every Monday I'm expected to have this productivity report. So I'm going to pull this from SAP. I'm going to pull this from our ticketing system. I'm going to pull this from finance. And this report is going to go to our CFO. And so they're able to see, okay, here's, revenue in and out, here is expenses, here is the tickets that were dealt with, and here's what's upcoming. And so what you start to move into is, what we saw in the movies, where somebody walks into a house, and well, Back to the Future 3, Marty walks in and he's like, "Hey, Marty, king of the castle." And the TV comes on and it tells him all about everything he needed to know. This is where we start actually experiencing that in real life, where the things that we've said, okay, for this job function, I need this information at this time from these tools. And instead of having to log in and get it, it's presented to us in an actionable way. And so it's more of a touchy-feely kind of thing with yeah, Back to the Future 2 instead of 3. Sorry about that. It's more of the touchy-feely, but it's this thing where the imagination is their only limitation, and the contextual nature of these chat interfaces with AI is making it to where it's easier to get these things ready. You can set up agents and bots that know, okay, when I'm asked a question, here are the data sources that I use. Here's the format that I want it. And that's where you have enablement, and the automation is where the report's ready and it's presented in a way. You had talked about ConnectWise, our ticketing system, when we were looking, or actually as Chris was talking about, we were looking at developing a tool to go out and grab information. And we have one of these tools in place now where when we have a ticket come in, it looks at the last couple weeks of tickets to find similar situations that have been dealt with. And it says, these two technicians dealt with this exact same problem. Here's the steps that they used. But it also pulls out, here's what didn't work, or here was a ticket that had to be revisited, so it wasn't successful. And so this is where we're starting to see automation, where our technician, as they're just touching the ticket, they're not having to research and pull it out. It's being presented. Here's relevant information that might make things faster and easier for you. So they have the SOP that's already pulled up. They have, here's the last couple tickets where you can look at notes. Here's the technicians that did it, so you can actually reach out to a peer and find out what was interesting about this problem. And for your normal break fix stuff, that's not a big deal, but you get into something with some nuance, and this starts to really add value where everyone is an expert because we have the data available. And that's the dream. We have it in one or two small places, and it's just, where is this going to grow over the next 5 years? We can't even imagine that now because the technology is moving so fast.
Yeah, so that was strong. I like the idea too that we taught so many people to decentralize a bit your data. You can sit in these different SaaS tools, and all of our applications went from, you need to have an app server with your storage locally and say SQL or another database, to, hey, now we're going to house that for you as part of our SaaS offering. Well, to do these things you're talking about, like what Chris Wilcox was mentioning, those types of agents, now you got to centralize that data back into Fabric or another source where all your data is in one spot in order for it to be consistently efficient, not have APIs break, etc. So it's interesting the continued circle of IT that we're in right now. Now we got to look at the data again and how we're storing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything you want to land on before we cut you loose?
There's a couple things to think about, and this is just where, I nerd out when I get into talking about governance and controls. I think having, an effective controls framework that points the company in a direction you want to go, making sure that you stick to it and you follow with it, but at the same time, you're willing to abandon that and kind of start fresh if, the technology or the strategy changes. I think there's a lot of value in saying, well, this is what it means for our company. This is, our history. This is where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do. But at the same time, always being open to have no, sacred solutions or sacred tools in the environment. If something comes up that really can add efficiency or be that transformative change for the business so that you can move forward in a way you never thought, I think it's always important to kind of circle back to that first step and looking at your controls and your policies, just making sure that you're always pointed the direction you want to go.
Yeah, my favorite line that you had in there had a lot to do with the you don't skip these steps. So essentially in the journey, you skip a step, you're going to pay for it later. So
Yeah.
don't get cute with it and think we can jump right in, or this program we're using is already secure, we can just jump right into it. Follow the journey and protect yourself so that you can do more later as you adopt the tools that you're getting. Allie, I think we're wrapping up. Do we have any questions on this session?
A little bit of this session, a little bit of the past session. We have a
Okay.
fantastic question from Doug. So Robert and Chris, feel free to jump in if your heart desires. But from your perspective, as someone actively navigating and setting AI guidelines for our organization, what do you recommend handling employees or team members who are curious about developing their own tools and integrating them into Microsoft 360 environments?
So I can answer that for the support side. So when AI came out, we actually had to do a center assist support policy for our employees, right? And so what we've told everybody is remember the customers first. Tools are cool. We love it. We want you guys to jump in and have fun with them, but we have to remember the customer comes first. So when you're at work, you're servicing the customer. But then what do you do when you're playing around and you find something cool? You simply bring it in. And I have an open invitation for anyone in our support team to get with me, and we will package up their idea and we will pitch it to our AI committee, and they can present it. And then we can schedule time for them to work with it if it gets approved, right? Because, somebody else may be working on something too. So we want to make sure we're not trampling over anybody, but we don't want to stifle anybody's ideas, and we want them to bring them because that's how the company benefits, right? Bringing the people in and their ideas. But we want to also make sure that we service our customers. So we do have that policy, and people have brought me ideas, and we've talked through them and been working on different things. But that's what we do for the sports side of the house.
Robert, the follow-up question might be a little bit more. So just so you know, Robert, Doug asked this question, I think about half an hour ago when you were starting. So you touched on this just a little bit, but his second half was what guardrails, resources, or starting points would you suggest to encourage that innovation while keeping it aligned with the governance policies? And he gave an example that would you advise them to register their own dev tenant to experiment and learn outside the production environment? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it really depends on the nature of the data that's being processed by this solution. So you're always going to have just some generic data, information about non-really secretive emails, meeting details for just mundane groups that don't have any particular intellectual property being discussed or critical business processes. That's all important data, but I think a lot of this is we have to step back and just say, what would it really do to our company if that got out or got messed up? If you don't have the legal regulations and you don't have anything like the law saying you can or can't do something, take a step back. And sometimes you have to step off your horse and just say, that data just isn't all that super important. It's okay if we try out some of these tools and just see what comes out of it. Now, when you step into where you have intellectual property or things that are regulated or customer specific, where you're just a processor, not a data owner, that's where you need to start really being careful. And so one of the things that I work with a lot of our customers and advise on is setting up, okay, so you're going to use GPT, or you're going to use Copilot, or you're going to use Claude as your overall for the company AI chat engine. Set your policy, get the right licensing in place, get the education for your employees so that they know if it is completely public information, maybe those are just the employees that just have a general personal account. But anything that is intellectual property or sensitive, make sure those are on the enterprise side or something that's tied to your tenant so it doesn't leak. And then likewise with the development that Chris was talking about, if you're needing something to generate AI images for marketing, well, that's a tool that's not going to benefit very many people in the organization. So make sure you've got your data governance, make sure you've got your controls in place, get them the right licensing. But now we're talking about buying it for 3, 4, 5 people and not 100, 200 people. And so you're able to kind of really control that scope, make sure the right people have the right tools. If you have application developers, those are the ones that need the coding stuff. It doesn't need to go across the whole organization. And so you're able to kind of box things in and make sure you've got the right controls. But again, for coding, maybe you only present that coding tool your development repository and it's not able to see production code. So the tool itself is only able to work through that scratch pad. And then as you escalate that code up into production, it goes into more of a secure enclave that the AI doesn't have access to. All of this is really determined by what regulations you're under and what kind of intellectual property you're working with for how much control you need to have in place. But I know it's not a popular opinion, but a lot of people need to just step off and just say, some of this information is not all that super critical and important. And therefore, we need to be a little bit more permissive and just see what interesting things our staff can do with the tools. And who knows, you're going to stumble upon something that might be the next, assembly line for your company that just is amazing.
Okay, that was good. Great question, by the way, Doug. I like how you worded pieces of that with the examples that got us thinking. Thanks for participating. If anyone else has questions, maybe how it relates to them and they're just, too shy to put it in the chat, feel free to expect that you can get with Center afterwards and we can work on how these things can be implemented in your business. Robert, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time. Chris, if you want to mute again, feel free. I'm going to bring Ariel Davenport on here. As I do, Allie, I think you have an announcement or a segue slide or something?
You know I do. And if you didn't know already, we have a YouTube page. If you're loving this event, check out our other ones. I'll send the link in the chat. That's
awesome. Look at all that movement. All right, so thanks for posting that up there. Allie's right. We do a lot of some fun things that we post on that YouTube page, and it's enjoyable to go through and see some of those. Ariel, are you with us?
I am.
Awesome. Let's see. Are you? I don't see you, but maybe Allie can help me some spotlights there. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about Copilot and maybe AI rollout strategies in general. Yeah, so that's what we're going to get started with. You ready?
Excellent. Where do you see this coming in? Perfect. So, Allie, I guess we're asking too much too quick. Sorry about that.
And another slide to you, James.
All right. So, Ariel, when this topic comes up, how's that usually start? Do our customers ask this question to you in every engagement these days, or is this kind of a niche thing?
Yeah, no, I think everybody is really looking to find out how to get started. There's a lot of uncertainty, right? Everyone, I think, at least I do sometimes. I know most of the customers that I'm interacting with on a daily basis feel like they're behind. Chris mentioned that a little bit earlier, and I don't know that anyone is really behind. I think it's all just moving so fast that if you blink for 2 seconds, you're going to be a little bit behind. So really what I wanted to talk about here in this session is specific to how to roll out, because Center, I think in general, people want to help you move things out faster, because that's going to get you the results that you want. Hopefully you can find something helpful in this. So if you have questions, ideally this is going to be a little bit practical. I like to give people actionable things that they can do as a follow-up. So with that, let's get started. Quick side note, my name is Ariel Davenport. I'm the lead architect at Center, and the picture that you saw previous is not AI. That was indeed me. That was many years ago. I guess I forgot to AI a new headshot for the marketing teams. That one's just a little bit old. But yes.
Just for everyone to stare at once more.
Yeah, look at that handsome young fella. All right. So starting off with like a kind of a quick story. So one of the things that happens a lot is if you work in an industry that has RFPs, whether you're putting one together or responding to one, those can be a little bit stressful. It tends to be a lot of information for what may be a very small chance at getting something. So I think it was last quarter, maybe the one before, we had a sales rep that was responding to an RFP, and we have Copilot licenses now, right? It has access to our SharePoint, marketing data, things like that, and they used that to help respond to the RFP, and it was awesome, right? It went from a task that normally took at least a full day to put together the responses, to structure it according to the document requirements, and it looked great. So sent that off, and everything was great until it was realized that that actually built off of some RFP responses we had in SharePoint from about 5 years ago. Now, the good news is that wasn't actually a sales rep, it was me. And it actually, thankfully, I had reviewed it before it went out to the customer. But one of the biggest things that Copilot, a risk around AI, is not necessarily that it's going to leak incorrect information. It's not going to exploit your whole environment or something like that. One of the biggest risks that it can present is a lack of data lifecycle management, right? That data is wrong, like presenting customers with old rates, old SLAs, old structures, things like that could be a very detrimental thing, and certainly not help on a customer response like that. So really 5 things that we're going to try to get through to help you start your Copilot rollout strategy is with 5 pillars. First one that we're going to cover is data security coming first, not last. So in the scenario that I kind of walked through there at the beginning, we've also heard stories about, like, hey, your finance documents got exposed because now everybody can search it. That's not really a bug, right? That is a feature. And Copilot in this case is working exactly the way that it's supposed to, right? It's grounding its responses in whatever it can reach, index, whatever the user can reach, and it's going to respond based on that, right? It doesn't know that there's a newer document that it should be pulling from. So making sure that the content there is not only secure and you followed regular practices around making sure it's not just open to people that shouldn't have access to it, but making sure that it's not stale is an important thing in getting ready to roll out Copilot. So the first thing that you can do, a couple of practical places, is Microsoft Purview. So sensitivity labels, auto labeling, DLP policies that actually fire on your Copilot prompts and responses are good tools to have, right? If a sensitivity label has encryption, right? So for example, let's say Todd Ellison on the call here, he says, hey, I've got some IP data here. I don't want it getting put into Copilot responses. If you use DLP policies and apply a restriction on the extract or the copyright, then when Copilot goes and searches that SharePoint library, it's not going to be able to summarize or quote that file, even if the user is allowed to open and view that. So very practical steps there. The other thing that you can turn on with Purview is the Data Security Posture Management dashboard, which can give you visibility into what Copilot is actually interacting with. So what that means is prompts, things that are getting queried, and it's really I think, I wouldn't necessarily call it like a full flight recorder, right? You're not going to get a perfect log of everything that happens in there, but when someone is using Copilot and you have sensitive data that you flagged, it can report on that in a very easy to use way, so that you don't feel like you're flying blind, right? The last thing that I ever wanted as an administrator is just the assumption that things are going well because you didn't hear any alerts fire off, right? That's not a great, not a great thing. So moving on, I guess if you want to drop something in the chat, if you are using any of those sensitivity labels, I'd be very interested to know if that's actually helpful to you guys. The second part is SharePoint Advanced Management. Now, a good portion of this comes with your Copilot 365 licenses, but it is also available as an add-on to anyone with the SharePoint license. And it has a couple of governance reports that are very helpful for a environment that is leveraging Copilot for general productivity. Some of those data governance reports are everyone except external users. And that's a report that will kind of give you visibility into things in SharePoint, similar to how we used to do on a file server back in the day, where we would say, all right, we're going to allow domain users to have access to this, and then maybe restrict down the subfolders. That can be a little bit dangerous in SharePoint because it's everyone, right? So getting a quick report on that, it historically was a hard thing to do in file server environments. You had to run some pretty extensive queries. A lot of times they're slow, but SharePoint Advanced Management has this report as well as several others. You also can get some sharing link reports and reports on sites that have sensitivity labels applied. So if you take some of these different SAM reports, you should be able to get a pretty quick view over maybe the top 20 sites in your environment that have access for everyone on. Maybe they've got sensitivity labels applied to the data inside of them, and all of that data is essentially there ready for consumption today. You just need to make sure either the Copilot licenses you have enabled that feature, or add on that SAM license. Let's see, moving on. Oh, another cool thing. So with SAM, you also have the ability to switch on restricted content discovery per site. So when we talk about enabling Copilot for environments, right, normally it's a pretty safe bet that if you are early on your cloud journey or early on your AI journey, you may not have a lot of content in SharePoint, or you moved it recently. So one way to restrict that is with restricted content discovery that you can set on a specific SharePoint site. That will prevent it from being essentially indexed by Copilot. Related to that is also the restricted access control, which does the same thing but is security group based. So I think I saw a question pop up. James, did you have a question?
There is a question posted. As far as like topic of where you're at and what the question's about, it's a little different. If you want to take a quick breather and a sip of water, we can get into that, or we can come back to it.
Yeah, let's take a look at it.
Okay. And then Robert, you might want to chime in on here too. Behind the scenes, Ariel, Robert is already kind of dissecting that question some. And hey, Allie.
Hey. If anyone missed it, the question is, what is better evaluate different AI tools used by employees? How can one not bottleneck based on AI policies? I said that a little weird.
Yeah,
okay.
So thanks for putting that question out there, Karthi. Probably the best way, like what I think Chris and Robert both touched on this previously, you don't want to be a bottleneck, right? So AI is a tool. I'm a firm believer in there's no unsafe tools. Maybe you do or you don't like guns, but there's, generally speaking, not unsafe weapons. It's really the people that are using them and the way in which they're using them. So maybe taking the approach of working with them. Hey, what are you trying to use this for? A really good example is, hey, maybe you have Copilot and Copilot Studio in your environment today, but you've got a user that wants to use Claude, right? Claude Code can actually write the YAML code for Copilot Studio agents. So maybe they don't know that. right? Helping to kind of show them, hey, this is the tooling we have in place that has access to the company data, because that's typically what they're trying to access. There could be some good workarounds there. Did that answer your question, Karti? So I'll wait for the response in the chat, and we'll jump back to that if you've got a follow up.
Ariel, good answer. Robert, was there anything else you wanted to add on the topic?
No, that was almost verbatim what I would have said. Chris had talked about, empowering our staff to bring tools to the AI committee. Much like what Ariel was saying, sometimes there's a process that we have and a slightly different tool makes it run smoother or enables the other tool to work better. Sometimes you can try generic code through it to see what the sample output would be. Sometimes you need to add it just like you would add any other new vendor or tool. Go through your due diligence, make sure you've got your process in place, you're limiting, so you're not indexing the wrong things with the tool, and do the trial. But you would need clear use cases and value objectives. Exactly what Ariel was just talking about.
And thank you
Perfect.
everyone for bearing with me as I was the bottleneck in answering that question.
Somewhat related to that, I'm a big believer in making sure that people can work well with the tools they have. There are a lot of cases where, if you want to talk about not IT related, right? I'm a big DeWalt guy. I've heavily invested in that platform. Some people find different benefits from rigid tools, from Milwaukee, maybe Ryobi, who knows? But making sure that people have the tools that they need to work comfortably is a very important thing, right? IT is supposed to enable an organization to move faster, not be a bottleneck and the guy in the basement that just says, no, you can't have access.
We all got the guy in the basement.
All right. Really, the second pillar, moving on, is identity and access. So the good news is Copilot's already connected to Entra ID. So every prompt or response is grounded in the identity scope of the user that is calling it. So specifically, that can help around, well, I shouldn't say necessarily help, but two things that you should definitely be doing are conditional access policies that require a compliant device for Copilot chat, or and MFA on all of those accounts, right? That's a kind of a baseline. There's a whole variety of other reasons why you should be doing that. If by some chance you have gotten this far without enabling multi-factor authentication in your environment, the last thing you want is someone with malicious intent and Copilot doing searches in your environment. The other thing that we can do, and this is, I think, a heavily underutilized feature in Entra ID, is the privileged identity management feature. So PIM, typically you would use that, or you definitely should be using it for global administrator roles, so that when someone needs access to a GA privilege, they can request it. That can be auto approved, that can be time based for a few hours so that they're not having to constantly check back in. But you can do the same thing for Copilot admin roles. So if someone needs access to Studio Maker, Search Admin, Knowledge Admin, those are they have a lot of privilege, right? You're managing the connectors to your enterprise data for agents. So it would not be that hard to create an agent in Studio that accessed things or did not work in a secure or ethical way, right? So you want to make sure that if you can, you restrict those. A couple other things worth noting is that with Defender for Cloud, you can see who's using Copilot, as well as, Defender for Cloud apps. You can see who's using Copilot as well as other AI cloud applications. So to kind of Karti's point about trying to help people evaluate things, one of the biggest things that we find when working with new customers on AI is that they don't know what people are actually using, right? You may have 30 people, you might have 3,000, but unless you're looking at either your like DNS filter, or Defender for Cloud. You could have people out there that, hey, we've all been talking about GPT, Claude, and Copilot, and you uncover 30 people that are on Perplexity, and it's now a core feature or tool set in their day-to-day life. So making sure that you have,
there could be one guy on DeepSeek. My bad.
there could be.
Yeah.
So getting that visibility with Defender for Cloud or like a DNS filtering agent like Cisco Umbrella or what Centrum provides as part of our managed services, very critical. Another thing that you can do related to identity and access management is making sure the unified audit log in M365 has the Copilot interaction event logging, right? So you can record that. You can make sure it's alerting. You can send those signals to whatever SIM or other platform you need. You can report on it just in general to Power BI or something like that. But getting that data into the log, making sure it's there so that if you need it in the future, you can check things out. And then also knowing that all of your Copilot activity gets saved to a folder in your Exchange Online mailbox is a good thing to bring up if you have a legal group or if you have any amount of retention requirements where you might be needing to pull from that during a legal discovery, right? You should bring that up and let everyone know beforehand versus finding out that, hey, when I run this this e-discovery request, all of a sudden everyone's what they thought were private Copilot chats are now discoverable data, right? That could be a uncomfortable conversation. All right.
What'd you say? My Copilot chats are saved?
They are.
You can see those?
Yes, they are. I also did not. I don't know how I didn't know that or why I didn't think to ask the question. Probably because I'm one of the guys that likes to go fast and figure things out later. But yeah, those are definitely saved.
I made some mistakes in what I put in there. Are they saved by default for only 30 days or something, or forever?
Ooh, good question. I don't know the exact time period off the top of my head.
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna go double check it.
Yeah, they are in there. Or if it is 30 days, maybe just don't say anything and wait till that that prompt flushes out by itself. Didn't hear here. All right. Pillar 3 would be piloting the right way. So one of the biggest mistakes you could make is say we've got 200 users. We're going to make a big initiative. We're going to get 30, 40 people licensed up for Copilot, and we're just going to kind of spread that out. Or maybe we're going to give it to the executive team, the people we think are going to do the most with it. That's probably not the best way to start a pilot because it's going to create a lot of unuseful data. What's going to happen is you're going to go look at your licenses and take a gander at the usage metrics in the dashboard. You're going to find that nobody's using it. The best way to use it is honestly at this point, everyone that would use it is probably using it for something already on the side. And when I say it, I mean AI. So if you've got people that don't even know what Gemini or ChatGPT are in their personal life, unlikely that you should give them a Copilot license day one, right? If they're not asking you for it, if you're not picking it up in your discovery of cloud apps, probably don't start with those people. From a practical standpoint, the best way to do it is to tie it to a function. So for instance, if you have a sales team doing something, right, having specific use cases that you want to pilot Copilot in, that's a tongue twister, but saying, hey, we're going to use Copilot for meeting recaps, follow-up drafts in Teams and Outlook. That is a great use case because likely if you have a sales team, you already have KPIs in place to track those response times. So if you are going to push Copilot to the sales team and you're going to enable them to take meeting recaps and all those things we talked about, take a look at your KPIs around turnaround time on customer responses. If you are reviewing contracts like James, right, we're going to put together a KPI on how long it takes James to review a document. And if we don't see that it's getting better as his Copilot usage increases, we're going to have to take that away because it just doesn't make sense. So, and these things, I mean, Chris Wilcox
Yep.
talked about IT ticketing, ticket triage, knowledge base, things like that. Those are all great use cases, but the key thing here is to make sure that if you're going to expect an improvement in something, you have to find something to measure. And when you don't see a change, definitely just get rid of those licenses, right? These are not cheap licenses. A lot of you are going to the executive team or the management team asking for a lot of extra money. Thankfully, these are monthly now, so you don't have to shell out all up front for them. But
Yeah, say that again, by the way. That's new.
oh, yeah. So Copilot licenses are available on a previously was yearly paid yearly license. You are now able to get that in a yearly paid monthly or a monthly license. So it helps your budgeting out a little bit if you don't have to just take here's $360, go try Copilot. That can.
There's also a lot of promos right now through the end of June. It was like the price for the paid annual was $360 a license. We're down to, I think it's like $21 a month for the license, plus purviews cut in half right now. Purview licenses are $5 a user per user per month through end of June. There's some quantities you got to buy 10 or more to qualify. And you got to buy less than 300. It's kind of a weird range, but they've got a lot of specials right now. If you're looking at jumping into this, following the 5 pillars, the AI through Microsoft's never been cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, James. So with
You're welcome.
kind of leading from that on how to pick the group of people or the use cases in your environment, just quick side story. Probably one of the most successful customer stories that we have about someone taking AI, injecting it into their actual business processes. And this is probably step 5, 6 of their AI journey. They actually had like these KPIs already measured out. They knew that there were things that they could not do with the people they had today, and they wanted to improve it. So they had specific goals set for those steps in their AI journey, those specific business processes. And when you do that, it's typically then very easy to measure a legitimate business outcome, whether that's customer satisfaction, ROI, actual dollars saved, new business won, things like that. So very important. It's easy to, honestly, in my past, it's been easy to get approval for new initiatives if you can clearly show this is how it's going to make money, this is how it's going to significantly improve the organization. All right. So the Copilot usage data, right? Picking and measuring adoption and the outcome, kind of building on the KPIs we talked about. Here's what you should definitely not do. You should not look at your M365 dashboard and say, all right, here's my active Copilot users. Boom, this is perfect. We've got 77% of the people are using Copilot on a daily or weekly basis. Great. That's not really telling you very much at all, because the person that you assigned a license to that doesn't know how to actually leverage AI is probably just using it for Google. And it's one of the most expensive Google replacements that you could possibly have. It's a great response, right? Everybody loves it when Opus comes back with like the perfect like go-to response, but it probably costs 100 times more than Google did. So making sure that you're not using active users as a metric and instead focused on things like time to close tickets, hours per finance close, right? If you're injecting processes into your accounting department, customer satisfaction, things like that, really help to build a qualitative side to what you're rolling out. And then on the kind of flip side, if you are maybe leading the AI initiative at your organization or close to someone that is, you should definitely send out some surveys and measure how your people actually feel about it, right? One of the biggest things that I have discovered in customer conversations, especially at the executive level, is when we start talking about AI right out of the gate. A lot of people just say, Copilot sucks. I don't want to use that. This is straight garbage. And then when we actually uncover what they're talking about, it's, oh, they were using the Copilot add-on in Word, and it's not actually doing anything for them. And maybe this was before they had the full chat interface in Word. So they're really getting like a neutered down version of Copilot, or it's just not the right use case for that tool. So making sure that you send out surveys, that you're not only getting visibility, like we talked about in pillar 2, but you're measuring how people feel about what you're trying in those use cases. Very important thing. Let's see, Grok. Oh man, I don't know that we have time for all of that, but that could be wild. I need to check to see if Studio has voice agents. That would be, I think it does, but it would be, you could probably make something there.
Well,
Probably couldn't get as wild, but you could
Copilot already has that on the app, right? Your phone app, you can do voice and talk to it. I just find the answers I get back from Grok so much more entertaining.
They can be. Not really ever used Grok personally, but I've heard some clips from Sarah and James as well. It's a little wild. I don't think I could handle that. All right, so the Copilot's listening. Yeah,
We're all talking about the other ones we like, or we're saying that Copilot sucks. It's listening to us.
Yeah, I mean, in those cases, it did suck in the way that it was. Part of, and that's going to be a little bit after we close out this next pillar. We'll actually talk about that for a second. So kind of the last pillar is that when it comes to your 3-year plan and how you're going to leverage AI in your organization, Copilot is the gateway, and it's also the floor, right? It's not the end goal. So if you are comparing it to other things, make sure that you and your organization understand that this is how we get started. This is how we roll it out in a enterprise environment safely and also successfully impacting the business outcomes. So layer 1 really is that M365 Copilot, right? You're getting out of the box stuff. Everyone, I'm sure on this call has used it, seen it, or just doesn't care. So layer 2 then would be Copilot Studio, where you're actually building agents, right? Maybe you've got a ServiceNow Dynamics 365 instance that you're trying to connect up so that you can start leveraging that data. That's really phase 2 for sure. While we're talking about agents, quick little governance nugget. By default, every licensed Copilot user can create agents in the Power Platform default environment. And if you don't know that, or that default environment is wide open, you should definitely lock it down, right? You've got tools like the Power Platform DLP policies on which agents, and Karthi was talking a little bit about this, where if you have people that need to build agents, maybe you don't want everyone connecting to your Dynamics connector. Maybe your CRM is okay, right? Maybe that customer data is low risk. Maybe it's public knowledge, whatever it is. That could be a low risk connector, but your Dynamics with financial data, maybe not just open that up to everyone in the Power Platform. And then the last layer is where you have a lot of fun. And I mean, the whole journey can be fun, but really when you're in layer 3, you're doing things in Azure AI Foundry, where you can pick all of your models, really kind of design your agent or process so that it's using something specific, like Claude, GPT, Minstrel, Microsoft's own models. You can do some pretty cool things there. I've built some projects kind of on the side. I enjoy using that. It's that part feels much more transformational than, hey, I can now automatically respond to emails. So definitely look forward to seeing the stories about how people on this call get to that layer 3 with the Azure AI Foundry. Kind of a sample progression, if you will, on how this looks, right? You can use M365 Copilot to summarize customer calls, right? Probably most of us are doing that today. We ejected or denied about 5 AI agents from the webinar before we fired it up, including one of mine. So that's definitely something I know a lot of us are using today. And then Copilot Studio, it's pretty easy to take those either from a webhook or something else into building out action items, putting it into a project plan or kind of a static document. And then that layer 3, Azure AI Foundry and other things, we can then start building actionable processes or start to like actually trigger things based on that using those platforms. So it's pretty sweet. Let's see here, James, let's see, ask Ariel. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with third-party agentic AI. OpenClaw is pretty wild. Fun fact about OpenClaw, since we're here and we're talking about AI, and I think this is hilarious. If you are on Telegram, you can very easily see which of your friends and people are trying out OpenClaw because it pops up as a notification when any of your contacts join Telegram. Right? That's probably the easiest thing to set up as your chat interface with OpenClaw. So if you're ever curious, get on Telegram, sign up, share your contacts, right? That's always a great thing to do. But you'll get a notification every time one of your friends pops in and starts trying OpenClaw. Let's see. Any questions? Make sure I'm not missing those.
Most of the chat area, to catch up to speed, is just making fun of James so far, making fun of his chat history or how many cups he's been using in one webinar.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So low hanging fruit. All right. So a couple of traps that you'll see as you roll out Copilot are, we bought it, we'll roll it out, right? Somebody buys Copilot. I've been on a couple of calls where the executive team just says, hey, we're going to do AI for everybody. Everybody gets either like a GPT account, they get a Copilot license, and now 100% of the organization is licensed for that. That's not great. That is almost 100% where I typically would see a case of oversharing or those exposed financial reports that everybody talks about, because you really just haven't done any of the homework at all. That's a good initiative, but even if you say, hey, I need 30 days to get this rolled out, let me do a little bit of due diligence. Right? Those Copilot licenses do come with some of that SAM enablement for SharePoint. They're, depending on your license level, there's a lot of good things you can do in Purview. Just turn a little bit of it on and you'll be able to kind of make sure that rollout is much, much safer, right? You don't have to go in and do like a full data governance program, right? You maybe should plan to eventually, but there's plenty of stuff that you can do that's low impact, that is alerting first, mitigate after type things, to still support an executive team, a management team that has an aggressive approach, but you still know that, hey, I want to make sure that we're doing this safely. So that's an easy way out of that one. Not sure if anyone on this call has ever noticed, but do y'all realize there's like 6 different Copilots, right? There's Copilot Pro, M365 Copilot, Copilot Studio, Sales, Copilot for Service, GitHub Copilot. I fell victim to this whenever Copilot for 365 was coming out, because Copilot for Sales was out first. So because I have access to some of the dashboards, I'm like, oh, what is this? I'm definitely going to check out. It's totally unrelated to M365 Copilot, totally unusable if you're not using some of the sales functions in Dynamics. So just making sure that if you are working with a team, you clarify what they're talking about, especially if you have a development team, right? They could be using GitHub Copilot. You could be talking about Copilot Chat, Copilot for 365. Clarify that, right? It's very similar to Azure, right? There's a big difference between a tenant and a subscription. Don't call them the same thing, otherwise you're going to be very confused. So
we have a quick question. Sorry to cut you off. But so Salem said they're looking at AI monitoring guardrail tools like prompt security, which they're already discussing with us at Center. But what are others being looked at?
That's a very good question. So who asked that question?
Salem?
Celine, yeah.
Celine. Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. That's who I thought it was, because I was just talking to Salim about that like last week. Great question. So the kind of like what we talked about earlier in here was Purview has a lot of things that are kind of native out of the box, related to making sure that your prompts are recorded, that the data being accessed is secure, and that the things that it is doing are secure. One of the things to call out is, if you are looking for AI security, generative AI is probably going to focus more on the data governance and those types of things. If you are a development team, and I know that Salim has developers at his company, there are other things that could be at risk. Prompt injection, or agents not performing or having guardrails when you expose them to a greater community. One thing I will say around those is most of what we've been talking about has been related to generative AI in Copilot, in data. The Azure platform, specifically like AI Foundry, does have a lot of things native to it to help protect your processes and agents, right? For example, if you have a interface to the public or to a large user base, you can do things like image analysis, right? So you can kind of like, hey, if I have a web form that wants me to upload photos of trees, you can make sure that people are indeed uploading photos of trees and not cats or some other malicious thing. Most of the tooling in the Microsoft AI Foundry has similar types of guardrails around it. So if you are, say, hey, I need an OpenAI compatible model to use my application widget XYZ that we built, you can point it at that Azure AI Foundry and get a lot of visibility and controls over that model, right? You can do some custom training on it. You can review the data that's getting sent to it so that you can say good, good, bad, and different things like that, so that it should be much safer than, hey, I'm going to point this enterprise application to Claude or OpenAI API, and I'm sure they may have some controls similar, but specific to AI Foundry, it's very easy to go in and enable those types of services.
Yeah, so the chat like went kind of bonkers for a second with questions after that one. So there is a good follow-up one to that. It might be easier for you to read it instead of us reading it back to you, but I'll give you the gist. The comment in here is about that they Well, now the comment moved. You're on your own. So the comment is, since we're all E3 and E5 licensing, they ruled Copilot out as the only official sanctioned AI tool, but they're getting requests for all the others. So we're now considering limited access for each tool that are in the department. How do you protect yourself by creating a strategy that enables agnostic use?
Yeah. So I think this is where the business needs to take a look at what they're enabling people to do, right? So if you're not moving faster than someone, they're going to drag you along with them. It's going to feel uncomfortable. Obviously, policies first, right? Make sure that you communicate what the intent is and what the business requires at a minimum. Hopefully, those are M365 E3s or E5s, so that you do have that purview suite and that Defender for Cloud apps. You can turn those on and start getting visibility into that. And then I would say I'll always start with the use case, right? There are very good use cases for Perplexity, Anthropic, OpenAI. It is unlikely that from a practical standpoint, you need both Codex and Claude Code for your environment. Maybe that shows you that there's just a disconnect between the development groups in your organization, right? You should be able to come to a consensus between one of those two things and like GitHub Copilot, right? I would imagine that while Copilot for 365 is not the right tool for any coding other than scripting really use case, one of those three tools should fit. And if you're seeing overlap between the same functionality, definitely clarify inside your organization what that is. The other thing to note there is that there can be a lot of confusion around the difference between AI as a term, a model, a brand, and a tool, right? So if we're talking about brand preference, who really cares? There's a ton of models out there that do different things. Models are, in a lot of cases, Microsoft has done a great job at putting a bunch of different models into Copilot. You've got some Anthropic models, you've got some GPT models. I'm sure that others are in the pipeline, but that's the model. That's not the tooling or the interface that's in front of it. Cowork is a great example of that from Anthropic. Claude Cowork can do a lot more with the same model that is in the researcher agent for Copilot for 365 because it's a different tool set. So forget about the general terms that people say, because if they're using Perplexity or Anthropic, they just like, hey, I need a chatbot. That's not the same as I need Claude Code, right? So making sure that you're differentiating in your conversations, being specific and saying, hey, we need this model because it reasons better or because the tool is different, right? That's a great question to help uncover some of the use cases behind those.
Yeah, so another question in here was, does the newly released E7 license, which I think was released this month, if I remember right, does it offer tools that help secure AI specifically? That E7 license is a bundle, as a lot of those are as they get bigger. So Defender tools, Entra ID suite, but also Agent 365. Ariel, do you know a lot about the Agent 365 tool that allows you to govern your agents?
Not enough to riff on it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, what that bundle, that E7 is designed to do is really empower an organization to get the most out of AI. Being able to run some of your processes in the cloud on essentially like an AVD workstation or something like that, so that you get a Cowork, Claude Cowork type experience are there. I think importantly is also the purview suite that is enabled in there. That's a really, really good add-on for like business premium or something like that in your environment to kind of make sure that you've got a solid baseline.
Yeah. So Jeff, that Agent 365 is supposed to be our people manager equivalency, so that you'll see your agents, what they're doing, how often they're working, what they're costing you, all that stuff in one pane. For an MSP like us, starting to give us the ability to see how our employees, but also our customers are adopting AI. Todd Smith, our CTO, would probably be a fun guest to explore that with. Obviously not on this because he's not here, but to explore that with if you want to take that offline. But yeah, it exists, and you can add that to your E5 or E3 licenses. It's not that it's part of E7. E7 is just a great bundle of the security required to do this responsibly, and that Agent 365 tool. All right. There's a follow-up. So I believe the question you were answering, there's now a follow-up to it from the same user. So users dragging InfoSec along is exactly what's been happening. We do have visibility into Copilot. One department leans towards Claude, another department towards ChatGPT, another towards Perplexity. They are now creating use cases to help us determine if there is one to rule them all. So I think I guess, Michael, the cat's out of the bag a little bit. Like if they're going down that path, it's going to be hard to rein them back, to reel them back in. But I do think you're doing the right thing by starting with the limit. Here's what we're going to use. And now we're starting to see, does the use case of a different tool make sense, or can Copilot do it? They need to give it a try. Same request, same prompt in Copilot.
Yeah, I would say that the use cases come first, right? There's got to be a solid use case behind it. And at the end of the day, what I would do is if I'm writing that use case, I'm going to say, hey, this tool that I can buy costs $100 a month. And here's where it's going to make our organization $1,000 a month, right? Here's the either savings, the new things that we're going to be able to do, the efficiencies on my team. Put it out there, because at the end of the day, it's just a tool, right? I mean, laptops used to be like, oh my gosh, you got a laptop so that you can take it home to work and all that stuff. Now it's almost like a table stakes kind of thing, where if you don't have a laptop. So the thinking of it as if you are getting pushback on, hey, we can't have all of these AI tools, it's probably because you don't have a solid enough use case. If you just want to use Perplexity because you haven't looked at Copilot, that's probably not a good use case. You need to have a justifiable reason for it.
I had a customer tell me that Copilot sucks, and I was like, okay, why? And he said, I built all of my company's commercials that we put like on the internet, and even one that we're putting on TV, leveraging Claude. Okay. Cool use case. Maybe you're right. I haven't tested it, haven't done it. Maybe Copilot is capable of doing it, but I couldn't tell you how. Ariel, you got some of that too, where like you spent a day trying to build something that you turned around and did faster somewhere else, right?
Yeah. So fun fact there. So I was trying to take some CSV files, and I wanted to analyze them and produce a structured output. And it was not the type of like the data was not in the format it needed to be in. So I needed to have AI analysis, because it was a very tedious process. You'd have hundreds to thousands of lines to go through, and you really had to do it one by one. So we could never afford at Center to put people on that process. We had to kind of take a smaller use case or set of data and say, based on the environment, this is what we're going to do with these things. And I tried for about 2 days to do this in studio, and it was brutal. The problem was I couldn't get it to output a consistent Excel file. And that was very important to me, because I need to be able to like turn over to the delivery team, hey, this is exactly what to do every single time. I can't have it coming up with new tables that we have to paste in and reformat every time. That would kind of defeat the point. And it was very frustrating to me. I still don't have that running 100%. Claude was able to make a skill for that in about an hour, with all of the variation I needed, with the consistent output at the end. And that was a frustrating thing about Copilot. Now it doesn't have the same enterprise controls because it's not hooked into all of the management and monitoring platforms that we would normally use. But using sample data, it's wild. It's why the tool matters, right? You can have the same model, but the use case is going to be impacted significantly by the model and the tool and the data that you're getting.
Ariel, you're doing great, knocking out these questions. People are putting some fun stuff in the chat. Recommend you read it when you get a chance. I think we're running short on time, and some folks are having to already bounce because we're at our scheduled in spot. Allie, is there anything we need to do before we start to shut this down?
Other than have a fantastic day and weekend.
Perfect. Ariel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you sharing all that. The team obviously did too in the chat. It's been fun to watch. For those of y'all still remaining until we're all the way done with this, don't forget we do have a lot of events that are coming up. June is a jam-packed month for us for events. Everything from in-person breakfast presentations to webinars like this around things like the steak event that we mentioned earlier. So love to have you guys visit the events page, take a look at what appeals to you most, and come join us for us doing more of this type of stuff. Thanks again for being here. If you have more questions, we want to answer them. Feel free to put in the chat last second or reach out to us. We'll reach out to you as well, and we'll be glad to continue the conversation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.